Welcome everyone to the Project Virtual Conference 2015, Hammers Are for Nails. I'd like to introduce to you your speaker for this conference, Larry Cristofaro. Larry is the President and Executive Consultant with EPM Solution Partners, with over 20 years of project management experience. He combines strengths in EPM architecture and project management to successfully manage Microsoft Project and Project Server online engagements. So without further ado, let's get this party started. Take it away, Larry.
Thank you, Renee. As Renee said, I'm Larry Cristofaro. I think probably many of you have looked at the session description. Hammers are for nails. Probably doesn't tell you much about what it actually is. But for those of you that are sort of joining free, this is really about making sure that you're using the right tool for the right job. I'm going to go through a little bit of introduction here. I'm going to be very quick. Larry Cristofaro, I'm president of EPM Solution Partners. I've got some certifications. I've been in deploying Project Server for over 10 years. President of user groups. I've been on the alpha review team for the last 2 versions of the certification tests. So I've been pretty involved, and I'm also a technology solutions professional for Microsoft, which means I have an account at Microsoft, and I get picked on a lot to help sales and help in their technical sales efforts. So I've been around a little bit. EPM Solution Partners is a company that is primarily around, it's a company that it focuses on providing solid solutions. It's a fairly straightforward approach, 3-phase implementation. There's a toolbox involved. It is a network of independent consultants. So you're going to get a lot of value for the money. It's not a big 6 firm. You're going to get people who've been in the business a while. Many of the partners that I work with were also on the alpha review team. So you're going to get a solid expertise from independent consultants that can provide you a great value at a reasonable cost. That's about it. So the agenda. We'll talk a little bit about why the session, and then I'll talk about a couple of challenges. Number 1 is tracking deployments for multiple programs across multiple locations. And the second challenge is around project portfolio management. Typical portfolio management's done in Excel. Both of these, I will tell you, were both assigned to me and originally started in Excel. Even, I mean, I've been using Microsoft Project for a long time. I've been very and in my experience, when I first got these things, I went, oh, well, that's Excel, because it's not really a Microsoft Project schedule. So I think I'll use Excel and we'll kind of work on it. And both of these, I moved from Excel to Project fairly quickly because I saw what the advantage of Project would give me in both of these instances. So I'm going to go over both of these. Why I learned Microsoft Project is kind of it's a little bit of background in that I was a project manager struggling with Microsoft Project like most people out there, and I hit a project that was fairly complex, and somebody was using Microsoft Project to track actuals, they didn't do a very good job with it. But what I saw and what they did was that Microsoft Project held a lot of data. When that project was over, it held a lot of data, and we were able to track what tasks took longer than others, where were we over budget, what was, we had an assessment that not only was, well, this is why we are over budget, this is what happened, but had quantitative data to prove it. And I went, well, that's pretty good. And became obsessed about using Microsoft Project to really be my one tool and not use Excel for everything else. So, and I will tell you that most of these two examples all started with Excel. I'm going to digress a little bit from the standard hold questions to the end. And I'm going to have a Q&A after each one of the two examples. So unless there's any questions now, Renee, I will start with example number 1. And I'll say silence is golden, so we'll continue. First example, multi-program, multi-location deployment. So this client had a very large enterprise program deployments, several of them. ERP, CMMS, advanced scheduling, and a couple of other smaller projects where they were all major programs that were deploying in most or all of their locations. They were all going concurrently, heaven forbid, but they needed to know what the impact was on these locations, because nobody had a real idea of when all of them were going to implement. It's all about a grid, right? You got deployments, you got locations, you've got times. It's a grid, and where each month where things are gonna fall. And I started out doing it in Excel: months, programs, locations, pretty easily, right? And I'm like, well, this is pretty boring. This is just a regular grid, and I wanted to do something better. A lot of people would have continued with what their familiar tool was, but I decided I wanted to go to Microsoft Project because I wanted to use some of the visuals that my project had. And so I ended up starting with something like this. So here's the ERP system. This is the Gantt chart. Phase 1 was installing in many of these locations. There was a phase 2. There's a CMM, and I did change some of these words. This wasn't actually a CMMM implementation. These aren't actually the same locations. It was an ERP standardization project, but some of these other things are, I did make some changes to it. And here's your advanced scheduling, a couple other supplier tracking. There's a Mexico facility, couple of applications that are retired. Looks like a grid, start and end date. I could probably have plotted those into months, but instead I plotted them in Microsoft Project using a Gantt chart. So what I did here, I said, and I knew I needed to flip it around. I knew I needed to understand what where these locations were, where these deployments were going to, and need to be able to sort it by location. So what I did is I started out with the deadline. I used deadline as go live. So where there was a go live, this is where the team was going to go on site, the go live date, and when the team was going to leave. So these are the durations that a team would be on site for each of these applications, and when they would go live. So there were several teams doing working here, then they were moving on, and then they were going to follow through with phase 2 once all of this was done. CMM implementation the same, and I just got creative and said I think go live will for visual perspective was going to be the deadline date. I also created a couple of fields, one for location. So these are all the different locations that are available, and I'll show you how I did that. And these are the applications, because I needed to understand where the applications were. Otherwise, it's a start and end date. And so in project, custom fields. Here's my location and my application. There's a legacy system. There's actually more to this than just what I'm showing you here, but this will give you a good idea of what's going on. So there's a location. There's a lookup table. So I had an abbreviation for each of the locations as well as the description. I also had each application as a lookup table. Pretty simple stuff. If you know Microsoft Project, if you understand custom fields, it's a simple lookup table. Not very hard. But the real key is this is a database. And having a database, I can now take all of these tasks and I can flip them around however I want. I can slice and dice. I can group and filter by any of these columns, and it took a little bit of playing around. I had these included predecessors and dependencies, and when certain applications could be retired, and there was a deadline of when it needed to be retired. So I was able to understand exactly where I had the power of Microsoft Project when I built this. But once I was done, I was able to now go in and show you the applications by location. So I took the location field and I said, group it by location. I created a custom grouping by location. So I grouped it by location. I filtered only the tasks that have locations. So I ended up taking out all of these important tasks like prep, but the ones that didn't have locations, I didn't really care about. There wasn't very many in here. There was actually more, but I took some of them out anyway. Each month, the project manager would need to go in here and update their dates, make sure that if anything starts, end dates, and go lives changed on a month-to-month basis. We were able to track through this on a monthly basis, be able to see exactly when as we were progressing against each application, we knew exactly where they were going to go. So as we get back to the locations, my group, you just click on more groups, and I created a new group called location, new task group. I'm going to edit it. Simple group by location, which was a text field that I created. I did not show summary tasks. I did not maintain hierarchy, so they were all very similar in there. You can select cell backgrounds or some other things in here that you can do, but that was basically the crux of the location group. I did the same thing with filters. I created a filter that just says location does not equal blank. Pretty simple. And again, don't show related summaries. So the summaries are gone. Simple locations, but when I did this, I also lost the function of application, because in my Gantt chart, application was a summary task. So pretty easily, I just added that back. I also added it in each of the Gantt chart bars. So here's North Carolina. Here's when the different applications are going to be deployed, and we can see where we may have some challenges, where we may have multiple deployments going on at the same time. Sydney, Ohio was a big problem. We can't be going live on multiple that closely. So we were able to see things that were that were staring us, that were problematic. And the only other thing I did here, because these would normally be a normal summary task, by just doing bar styles, I was able to take that group by summary, and which is this line, the group by summary task, and I was able to just change the color and the start and the ends, and kind of made it something a little bit different. So that's really about it. It was quite easy. It's now we have some interesting visuals along with what we're doing, and they're all project managers. They certainly know how to use Microsoft Project. And we were able to print this off and show these to the executives, and they were really happy with it. And that's about it. So this, again, was something that started in Excel, and I went to get the visuals. I decided to use Microsoft Project, which ended up being a pretty good decision. So with that, are there any questions?
No, Larry, we do not have any questions right now. I have viewers, but no questions.
All right. Then we're going to go to the next one. Thank you. The next one is a project portfolio. The kicker here is that the project portfolio requires, they wanted to add resource capacity. I was at a client, and as everybody knows, that people's first portfolio is always in Excel. So you take Excel, you put your projects, you get some custom columns, and you set up your portfolio. They may go to SharePoint if they want to try to get more collaboration with the portfolio and get some more people involved, a little bit more visibility than Excel. But until you go to Project Server or any other enterprise tool, it's important that that you have something first. You have to feel the pain, and that first portfolio is with Excel. This particular client did install Project Server. One of the primary reasons and goals they had, obviously one of the problems most people that are implementing Project Server is resource capacity planning. It is usually what champions Project Server to begin with. And if anybody's out there that has done Project Server knows that resource capacity planning is typically not the first phase of Project Server. It's very difficult to roll up that, to be able to roll up resources within project details. It requires very high fidelity projects. There are resource plans now, as some other sessions here, they're moving into engagements, but all of that's a lot of work, and it's more effort, requires all of your project managers to really be engaged and as much as possible have accuracy in their project schedules. And accuracy doesn't come in phase one. It's really being successful. Time entry if you're doing time entry, but it's really a getting those estimates correct and getting them and continuing to be correct through the life cycle of a project is fairly hard. And as we were deploying this, the PMO directors kept coming up to me and says, you know, I had another executive meeting and these guys really needed resource capacity. I'm like, okay. They had a sheet called an LOE, a level of effort estimate. And that did have their initial estimates. I'm like, we can do this. And this is their need. We weren't going to do it in Project Server. Says, let's do it in what I termed a poor man's portfolio. And with that, hang on here. I created a portfolio. We created a project portfolio. Not hard to do. If you look at this, it's Excel. This could have very easily have been Excel. This was our first take on it was Excel. This is what Excel was their first portfolio before we went to Project Server. But we wanted sorry, I'm looking at my notes, but we wanted to make sure that we had resource capacity. So here's our project pipeline. All of these projects were changed. These are actually just cities in Iowa for whatever. I looked online and found a list of cities in Iowa. So bear with me. That's kind of the projects. Again, I'm protecting the innocent. But for each one of these, as you can see, are estimates of the resources, and I'm going to show you how we did that. It's a little bit unique. So you'll see that these go for quite a while. These are several months. There's a lot of hours. These are very large projects. So this pack, we would enter the project, enter the resources, and then we would go into this LOE worksheet for each city. I'll move that somewhere. And for each resource, these are the teams that are involved. For each resource, we would have the number of hours for that resource and something called a work contour. So it's really hard to say, you know, here's all the months. These are actually quarters for this project, and to be able to enter hours by month or by quarter for each of these projects was fairly is hard for anybody to do. So they already had a level of effort. They already knew how many hours were going to be required by each of the teams. That was part of that LOE worksheet. And all we added is the element of a work contour. And a work contour, flat is flat, that's straight. But if you want those hours backloaded, front loaded, double peak, and you can see all the icons over here of what each of these work contours mean, but you can have it front loaded, double peak, early peak, late peak, a bell, or a turtle. Now a bell, everybody knows of the bell, it's up in the middle. A turtle's not up quite as high as a bell, so that's a bell, and that's a turtle. So there's just most teams can tell you sort of about how those resources are going to be laid out without having to actually put numbers of hours. So we would take the duration, we would take the hours per team, and the work contour. Once that work contour is done, and we do that for all of our projects, I'm going to show you a little bit about the budget areas. Here are the different budget areas, and I've grouped them together. There's the president, technology services, manufacturing, distribution, finance, administration. These are the teams. These are the generic resources. They're actually teams and departments, but the initials, the group, and the max units. The max units of each of these areas is the maximum number of the maximum full-time equivalents that each of these teams can work on projects. Some of these weren't set. They're stated 100% because they weren't critical resources, but within manufacturing and distribution, a lot of them were set up. So they may distribution planning and supervision may have had more than 6 people, but the 6 full-time equivalents were available for projects. 2 full-time equivalents within supply chain, 15 full-time equivalents in packaging, 3 full-time equivalents in maintenance. So they determined how many full-time equivalents were available to work on projects. That means everybody else is working on admin, maintenance, incidents, that other stuff. Once we have that capacity and we have our efforts by project, we now have, well, actually, I'm going to show you a timeline first. So here's our projects, and you can see that we are, and this is actually real. The projects are different. The timeline is different because I did move the project to be a little bit more current. But if you look at this, these are the projects that are being planned. These are the projects that have come along the way. But come second half of 2017, I believe it's August or September is the beginning of their planning year. These are all the projects that they need to plan. So they've all started, and and now it's time to do some now I can't think of the word. Do some sourcing of those projects. So to do that, here are the different groups, and here's how they lay out. So let's go back to the engineering had 10 full-time people. So you can see here that of all of the people, 10, this is right here in and around this 2017 third quarter. These are where the projects are started, second, third quarter. You can see where all of these, where you have your thresholds that need to get moved out. You have all, everything's kind of bounding together all in the same time period. So here is where you can begin the effort of going back and starting to move projects around, going back to your project's pipeline, changing start dates, moving some of these all these projects that are out here, having an idea of the utilization. So if you want to understand utilization, total utilization, here's another view. This is a resource usage view. A lot of people understand work, but there's a detailed styles, and percent utilization is one of the detailed styles that you can assess on a resource usage view. You just right click here, and this actually gives you a percent of total capacity that resource is being used. So you can see here 115 might not be a lot. This is 59. It's probably somewhere in the second quarter that it's been high. That's probably not too bad, but it did hit over 100 in one of those months. But I can now pull it from quarters to months if I want, and I can start seeing where it might have, I don't know where it went, but I can see where it's starting to pick up. As you can see here, January this is where we're starting to understand total usage. And we can also understand total usage based on project. So if we're overloaded in this area, here's the different projects. Here's Project Ottawa. That's really kicking this thing up. This is still hard it is attempting to slot projects, that's the word I was looking for, based on capacity. But you have all of the information here, and you have a single worksheet where I not only have my project list of all my projects, I have my efforts with a contour that I can put in. So this is a little bit tricky. I have a nice little visual timeline, and I can color code this. I have my resource capacity, and I have my utilization based on a nice little graph of when we might need temporary help or basically just move projects out. And lastly, we have all of these nice little tools to help us do this. So with this, I'll come back to my PowerPoint here. We have, I can tell you now that this was actually done 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. That same company has now graduated to Project Server for doing resource capacity. It's something they couldn't do in phase 1, but it's a need that they had to resolve, and we were able to do that in Microsoft Project, and we did that fairly successfully. We then finally moved it to Portfolio, where they were able to implement priority selection, portfolio analysis, prioritization, selection, and all of the project slotting within Project Server. So with that, are there any questions?
Hi, Larry. I don't see any at this time.
It is kind of late at night.
We still have viewers, though.
Oh, I welcome all the viewers. I cherish you. I'm not sure there's much other than an ocean that's this is actually a current time period, but hopefully we'll get some viewers in a recorded session.
Yes, that's very informative.
Go ahead.
It's been very informative.
Well, thank you. So with that, no questions. And in conclusion, I will let you out a little bit early today. It's nighttime. You guys need some rest. So make sure you get the right tool for the job. If it has to do with a schedule, your choice is really Microsoft Project. Think of it, learn it, understand it. It's a matter of working with the views, understanding custom fields. If you know Microsoft Project as well as you know Excel, then you've got a tool that can do a tremendous amount for you in helping to provide you a much easier, much more complete, and much better solution at times than you can get with Excel. Thank you to all the sponsors. Thank you so much for all the MVPs and for Microsoft for putting this together. I think, and Prasanna, who's just been tremendous in all of this. So with that, I guess I will let you guys all go.
Thank you, Larry. And I just want to remind our viewers that we'll be broadcasting it still for the next 11 hours throughout the night. Thanks again, Larry.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.